Well, we are starting a new series this morning. Before we get to that, thought I would bring the morning humor and found a story about a lady that was home and the doorbell rang. She went and opens the door, and there's a man standing there. He's got a tool bag and some equipment with him. He's got a little name on his uniform that he's wearing. And so she could tell he's here for some kind of official business, but she had no idea what it was. And she asked him, she says hello and greetings, and how can I help you? And he says, well, ma'am, I'm the piano tuner. I'm here to tune your piano. And the lady exclaimed, well, I don't understand. I didn't send for a piano tuner. And the man replied, well, I understand that, ma'am. I think it was your neighbors who did. There you go. So we're beginning today this new series called 40 Days of Wonder. Every year leading up to Easter, in the Easter season, the celebration of the Resurrection Sunday, we embark on a 40-day journey of kind of spiritual preparation. And I'll give you some assignments here at the end of the message, but this will be our theme for the next 40 days. And I really hope and pray that you embark on a journey to rediscover the wonder of God in your life. That's what it's all about. As we begin, I just want to ask a couple of questions and give you some things to think about. And as I ask this question, I ask it with great trembling and trepidation, because if I ask the question and then put a microphone out on the floor, we would be busy for a very long time, I'm sure. But what would you say is wrong with the world today? Right, we could really go sideways with that question. What is wrong with the world today? What about our country? Oh boy, I don't know if that simplifies it or complicates it to ask what is wrong. Where have we gotten off? What's going wrong? What's going sideways? What are the problems? I mean, what would the answer be? Or people in general. You know, as you think of people that you know, well, look at your family, look at your neighbors, look at the people in the church. Oh my goodness, what is wrong? Where have we gone wrong? What about in your life? What's not working in your life? In you, in your situation, in what's happening? Is there anything that you struggle with? I kind of threw out the church today. You know, last week we had our executive director, Lloyd Moritz, was with us, and he shared in the sermon, and then he met with our council afterwards and shared a little bit about what's happening in the P&A, the Pacific Northwest Association of Network of Ministries or something. It's got a new name now. But he shared what's happening in that and across our district and with other churches and so on. But then he asked us that question. What do you think is the greatest challenge facing the church today, your church today? What's the greatest challenge? And we debriefed that a little bit, gave him some ideas and thoughts about struggles and where we're fighting battles and so on. But what's the greatest challenge facing the church today? Well, it just so happens, author Paul David Tripp wrote a book called Awe. I mentioned this 2 weeks ago, just right before we watched the video. And Awe is about the awe of God, and the subtitle is really interesting. He says, why it matters for everything we think, say, and do. Essentially, I'm reading this book to prepare for this series. I've been watching listening to a series of sermons from a pastor friend of mine up at our Colville church, Pastor Bill Provost. He's doing this series on awe, and he started earlier, so I get to just kind of copy what he's done, which helps out a lot, as you imagine. But those are my two sources I'm studying and thinking about and trying to use to prepare for this series. But in his book, Awe, if you think about that subtitle, why awe matters, why it matters for everything we think, do, and say, essentially he's saying it matters for everything. Awe is the answer to every question and challenge and struggle that we're facing. I throw that out for you to marinate on that a bit in your mind, to consider that. I hope you ponder it for a while. I was sharing with the worship team this morning. I've been reading the book. It's really given me so much to ponder. I've been challenged with this idea like you wouldn't believe. As I started reading the book, I started going through it, and as normal, I started highlighting, and I thought, oh, this is really good. And I'm going, and I started taking notes. And then God was convicting me about things, and I started writing some stuff down and pondering. And then I had to pause for a while and just start praying over some of the things that God was saying to me as I was going through this. And I'm going all through it. And then I get through the section I was currently working on, and the author signed it and said, I hope you really enjoy this book. I realized I had just read the introduction. That's all I had done, and I'm like, I'm a wreck. I can't believe it. I didn't even realize. You'd have thought I would. I'm already praying. I'm already struggling and wrestling. I'm already in tears over this thing, and it hasn't even started yet. And I shared with the team this morning. I hope I can just share a portion of the message that I believe is contained within this idea. This idea of awe, glory, and wonder of God. You'll certainly be able to wrestle with that on your own. Is it the answer? Is it the thing? Is it the place we need to look to figure out everything else? If it is, we probably should pay attention. And so along comes this idea in this book of awe and wonder, and the author, Tripp, Paul David Tripp, he comes along and he says, this is the issue that is going to deal with every pain that you struggle with, every battle that you have to fight, every failure, every fight in your life, every disappointment, every struggle, every worry, and every fear comes down to this issue of how you handle the awe of God. Now, again, I recognize that's a huge claim. That's not just, I wrote down in my notes, that's a big claim. That's a huge claim. That's a big deal. But if he's right, it seems that it would be worth taking some time to try to figure this out, to try to understand it, at least to process it for a while. In fact, if he's right, it would make sense that everything else in your life should go on hold until this is brought into focus. Everything else in life is worth setting aside until this is determined. And in fact, Jesus did say something similar, and he didn't quite say this is the answer, but he told a parable about the kingdom of heaven, and he says it's like a treasure that was discovered in a field. A man walks through the field, he finds a treasure in that field, and then he hides it again so that he can go out and sell everything else that he has. He sells it all. He liquidates every asset down to the last grain of rice so he can get all the money that he had and invest it into buying this field, and therein becoming the owner of the great treasure that was buried within. Isn't it interesting how we make everything else in our life so important, and the one thing, the kingdom of heaven, so unimportant? The awe of God, rediscovering the awe of God and what it means to us. How it can give us a brand new life and way of living. We're going to go to Romans chapter 1 this morning as we look at some of this. Try to unpack it a bit today. And this morning's topic is the wonder in creation, as we consider how the heavens declare the wonder of the Lord and open up to us the magnificence of who God is, the mighty power and glory that he has and is owed to him. So in one sense, I initially thought, I I want to declare the glory of God. A couple of weeks ago, we watched that video, and Louis Giglio talked about just how big the universe is. And within it, he looked at, our size, the size of the earth compared to the sun, and how we are so small compared to the sun. But then he went out to a bigger star, and he said that star is so big that the orbit of our earth around the sun is too small to compare to that sun. And then he goes on bigger and bigger and bigger to where we can't even fathom anymore really how big just these suns are that are contained within the universe of this magnificent creation of our God that we serve and that we get to worship. And I thought it would go that way, and then I'm reading through and I'm reading in Romans 1, and I just felt that this really kind of deals with what I want to talk about this morning, and yet it comes not quite as much about the great majesty of God, but a warning that says if we do not capture the wonder and the greatness and the awe of God, how we can get lost instead. So let's look at this. Romans chapter 1, we're going to start with verse 18. It says, "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made, so that they are without excuse. For although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him. But they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal men and birds and animals and creeping things." So instead of it, in a few verses, it goes on to say, so instead of worshiping the Creator, they worship the creation and the created things and the creatures of the earth. Instead of worshiping and being captured in the awe and the wonder of God, they gave their wonder and their awe over to the things of their own hands and their own design. So let's understand a couple things about this and how this idea of awe works. Number one, we need to recognize that we were built for the capacity for awe. It's a part of our DNA. It's a part of our design. It's ingrained in who we are. It's like the purpose even of our heart to be caught in awe. Verse 21 said that we are designed to know God and to bring glory and thanks to him. That's why we were created. We are built for this capacity for awe. We are built to fill our hearts with the wonder of the Lord, to know the glory of him and who he is. A couple weeks ago, I made a little light of our trip to the Grand Canyon and how we rather quickly, fell out of that wonder. Yet I understand it truly was amazing to stand on the edge of that really this great creation of God, and to just consider, where did it come from? How did God's handprint make this vast, amazing creation? It was beautiful, just trying to capture images in our minds of all that we took in. And you know what that's like. You've experienced amazing things in your life. You've had moments of awe as you have lived. Perhaps you've held a newborn child. Maybe you've stood in line for hours to get that ticket for a concert you've been waiting for more than a year to go see. Maybe your heart has pounded during some exciting sporting event. Maybe you've spent hours primping Those are two different things. But maybe you spent hours primping and getting dressed for high school prom. The excitement, I mean, something that, guys get ready for 5 minutes ahead, and girls start preparing for probably months ahead. On and on, we have these amazing moments in our life that we experience that thrill and that sense and that wonder. Or we spend our life constantly searching for the next amazing moment and wonder in our life. Because we are designed with that capacity for awe. We know the difference between the putrid smell of a rotten egg or the beautiful bouquet of flowers. We know the difference when our eyes see the desolation of a wasted desert land or the beauty of a light morning mist that gently rolls down the hillside in the valley. Our fingers can tell the difference when we touch something rough or coarse, or when you stroke the soft touch of the hair of someone that you love. You see, we have the capacity to know the difference. We have been built and created, designed to know what is awesome and wonderful. We've been created that way. We look at the universe, and if we allow our mind to ponder it in some way, somehow, we can see a little glimpse of how glorious and great our God is, as our heart is caught up in awe of what He's created. The text that we just said, that we just read, it said that we can know how great and how powerful God is, because since it's the beginning of the universe, it declares His glory. But we are also the only created being, or created thing for that matter, that has been built with this capacity for awe. I put this to the test as I was thinking about it a little bit. My wife and I like to go down our basement once in a while and watch a movie. And I have my chair, and I have a warming blanket, which is really nice in the winter. And I put my warming blanket on and get my popcorn and my soda, get ready to enjoy some movie. And as soon as I get settled in, our little 10-pound Shih Tzu jumps up on my lap and loves to lay on that warming blanket too. Little Kinsey, she'll jump up there and she'll lay down, and the movie will begin. And we're enjoying this movie, and Sandy and I, we're sitting there and we're watching the movie, and sometimes we're laughing, and sometimes we're crying, and sometimes we're yelling at the screen. I can't believe it! Watch out! Look out! So sometimes I have to hold her hand when I get really scared. All those kinds of things, and then that little Shih Tzu on my leg, what's she doing? She's snoring. She snores louder than my father. Now, you wouldn't necessarily know this, but let me tell you, he's a real house shaker. And I can't believe it. I mean, we're captured in the scenery and the beauty and the wonder of this film, the artistry of it all, and she's snoring. Now, once in a while, I'm snoring too. If the truth be told, I miss the wonder and I fall asleep. But she does every time, because she wasn't built for awe. She doesn't look at a sunset the way I do. She doesn't have the attachments. I mean, she kind of loves us as a family and things, but I think it's because we feed her and scratch her belly. Or because we've come home. She gets all excited. She isn't built with the capacity for awe like we were. It should tell us something about how we should look at God, and how we think about God, how we experience and know God. Because we were built with the capacity to be filled with awe. Now, second, we need to understand that because we've been built with this capacity, Your search for awe will determine your life. Where you are looking for awe, where you are searching for awe, where you think you will find awe is going to determine the course of your life. Verse 22 said, claiming to be wise, they became fools, and they exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man, birds, animals, creepy things. They're saying, God created them with the design and the purpose and the capacity to find awe in the glory of Him. But instead of finding it there, they went searching for it in other places. They went looking for that awe elsewhere. They created images of their own design and their own hand and their own making to try to fill up their heart. And every person is going to wrestle with this crossroad. Will you search for the glory and the wonder of God, or will you seek out the glory and the wonder of your own making? One road leads to God, one does not. One road leads to a satisfied heart, and one does not. One road leads to fulfillment, and one does not. One road, even in our text said, is wise, and one is not. You are built for the capacity for awe, and your heart will be searching and searching to be filled with that sense of awe. If you do not find it in God's presence, if you do not find it in His wonder and glory, then you will try desperately for the rest of your life to fill it with everything else you can. Interesting, I was reading through Our Daily Bread this week, doing my morning devotions, and there were two stories in this week that I thought were interesting and similar. Both stories were about churches, and one was, I think, Friday, and the other one was Monday. So they're kind of on the opposite ends of the week. But in both of these stories, these churches had to wrestle with their purpose and their calling and how that matches up with their stewardship of resources. The first was a church that was experiencing kind of a sharp increase in attendance because refugees had been moving into their community. And as the refugees were moving into the neighborhood, they were interested in Christianity, and they started coming to church. And they were just trying to seek and learn and understand, but there was kind of a lot of them. And they all started visiting the church. Now, the second story was about a church in Singapore. And in their church, right next door to the church, they had a very large field, kind of a park-type field. And every Sunday afternoon, there was this large group of people that would come over and use their field because I guess it's kind of hard to find space like this. And so they were using the field for an afternoon picnic. And they were gathering out there. Well, in both stories, what was happening is the church folks, the church members, the churchgoers, had rather mixed feelings about how they felt about this and how they were going to deal with these issues. Some felt like these folks were a nuisance that brought a certain amount of disruption into the way they did things. Others felt excited that this was a divine opportunity to meet people that were showing up at the church. They were coming to them. They didn't have to go anywhere. People were coming to them. This was like an opportunity to meet with people and connect with them and represent Christ in this situation. Even when it comes to church life, we have to ask ourselves, why are we here? What are we doing? Is it our purpose to experience and know the awe of God and bring glory and honor to Him? Or do we gather here because of what we have built and what we do and where we are invested? Our hearts are desperately seeking awe. Are you generous or materialistic? Are you loving or angry? Are you thankful or jealous? Are you self-controlled or lazy? Are you conservative or gluttonous? Are you satisfied or lustful? You see, you can fill your heart with the awe of God and have his things, or you can fill your heart with the things of your own design and search for them, never being satisfied, never having what God has designed or wants for you. And lastly, commit to increasing your capacity for awe. We need to commit to increasing our capacity for awe. Now, we'll unpack this a little bit every week as to what that means, how we can do that. But for now, notice that in these verses, it really says it is your choice as to where you will find awe and wonder. It's really up to you. You can seek out the glory of God or not. You have to choose. You have to make a choice. Verse 20 said that God's invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that he has made. It's clear. So then why do people deny that there is a God? Why do people run away from God even if they know he's there? Because we have a choice to make. We can seek him, we can serve him, we can love him, and we can be in awe of him, or we can be in awe of our own things. So 2 quick ideas or thoughts on how you can increase your awe as we head into this series. Number 1, can I challenge you to lean in? Lean into this series, to this idea. I guarantee you, I am not going to give it I'm not going to give the kind of sermons that the message deserves. And again, I didn't come up with this. I'm learning a lot alongside you. I'm being challenged. The message is not my original thought here. And so lean in. I'll bring my best. But there's a lot of work that you should do on this. Lean into it. Be at church on time every week for the remainder of this series. Lean in. We have devotionals in the back. We have them out there every week. Make sure you've got one. You can do it in your phone or computer, or take one of those. But you need to be looking for chair time every day. In your folder, there's a prayer calendar that Barb is helping out in our office, and she's helping put this together. And it has verses for you to meditate on and prayers for you to lift up before the Lord, and use this. The 40 days actually starts on Tuesday. Use this to meet with the Lord and try to discover what it means to be in awe of God. I'm going to ask, as you're praying, I don't ask this often, and I should ask more. I would covet your prayers for this series specifically. I don't know why. I had this conversation with Pastor Bill as he was preparing. He just said when he started to prepare for this message, it just seemed like all hell broke loose. It's been a tough week. And just in conversations, problems, my own spirit, getting ready for last night, which was a lot of fun, but it was a ton of work. My computer literally blew up this week. Our church credit card got stolen this week. The snow yesterday. I mean, it was just like day after day, big things were going on. Things that were taking hours and hours to fix. And I'm not careless with these kinds of things. But I just wonder, as I wonder for the Lord, if there is not an enemy that recognizes how much he'll lose if we gain true awe. Lean in. Lean into this. Like they say, you'll only get out of it what you put into it. And I challenge you to lean in. Second of all, be present. As you're leaning in, be present. Seek after God with your whole heart. You can read Scripture, or you can attempt to hear the voice of God. You can sing songs, or you can praise and bless and lift up his holy name. You can attend church, or you can sit there with your phone on Facebook or planning lunch or, whatever. You can do these things with your heart engaged, or you can do these things just trying to get it done so that you can get on to the next thing. Be present with the Lord for these next 40 days. And seek him. Add to this whatever you need to add to find out if there's an answer to be found here. Is there a treasure that's buried in a field here that needs to be discovered, and it is worth everything else in your life to give it up for this? Then lean in and be present in this process and seek the Lord.